Hello and welcome to the new International Championship season. I'm playing in the Master 1 division, and those of you who remember the last game of the International Championship that I shared on this channel might now wonder and say, wait a minute, in the last season you only finished second in the Platinum division, and if you say that, you are correct. But at the end, a player of the Master Division decided to not participate in this season, and with that, I got promoted as the best second place of the last Platinum's division, and thankfully can now play in Master again. And if you take a look at those names in my group, there are definitely some tough ones among them. So partly it feels maybe even like a Grandmaster League, and it will be a tough challenge. And now we can maybe quickly introduce the players of this group. And as the first player, we have Grozz, who I think will be covered for the first time now on this channel. And he is a player who I think is in quite good form at the moment. In the last Intermezzo Championship season that just ended, he won his Masters group with a very good amount of 22 points. Will now be playing for the first time in the Grandmaster division in the next season. I think for the first time. I hope I'm not missing out on something. Then we had in the last two seasons in the International Championship, he both got relatively close to winning the Masters group, but both times didn't manage to win it, and with that is still playing in Master, but is a player who is, when we are looking at his performances, it seems very realistic that he soon will maybe find his way into the Grandmaster division. The one thing that maybe didn't go ideally for him is the current World Championship, where he got eliminated in stage 5 already. So the same stage as I, but maybe there was some potential for him that he could have made it even further. But a player who is in great form. My record against him is not really that great, and let's see how that will be going that season. The next name you might be familiar with, because it is of course the reigning world champion Martin Pecheur, who is playing in the Master Division as well. And when we are looking at his recent performances in Intermezzo and International Championship, I can maybe be somewhat comforted that I'm not the only world champion who isn't performing very, very well at the moment. Mota, in his last Intermezzo Championship season that just ended, got relegated from Master into Platinum, and in the last two seasons in the International, he played both times in Master and was maybe nearer to relegation than to promotion, but managed to keep the league both of the times. But of course, the big difference to me is that he is actually still playing in the World Championship, so he made it to the semifinals, and so there where it counts the most, he is still pulling off some great results, and is of course a very experienced player, has won the Intermezzo Championship a couple of times, is the reigning world champion, so one of the most successful players that we have in the game. Then the next player is Eepogi, and Eepogi has a little bit of a run at the moment with being covered on my channel. You saw him in the last Intermezzo Championship season, you saw him in the one game from the World Championship that I covered, and now you will also see him in the International Championship season. And of course, from the last Intermezzo Championship season, you know that he finished second in the Grandmaster division, and also his last two seasons in the International Championship. He played in Grandmaster in the second last season. He even got very, very close to winning the Grandmaster division, finished at the second place, and then in the last season he got relegated, but with still a solid amount of 14 points, which often can be enough to avoid relegation. And so now he's in Master again, but he is a player who's in great form at the moment, also still in the semi-finals of the World Championship. So definitely a very strong player who also has his own YouTube channel. Then we have Allfather, and Allfather's maybe a bit more of a rising star at the moment, or someone who is new to the Master level. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he will be playing for the first time on the Master Division in International Intermezzo Championship. And for two seasons ago, he still played in gold in the International Championship, managed to win his group with a very good amount of 25 points, and then he got into platinum again, immediately managed to win his group, is now at 25.5 points. And in his Intermezzo Championship season, he played in platinum, got second with 18 points, so a player who has been improving, it seems. I think I played against him already in the World Championship, not in this one, but I think in the one before, maybe even in the one from 2 years ago. Maybe I should have checked that before the video, but there I encountered him, and yeah, he played already very solidly back then, but maybe has quite improved now compared to back then, and is now, yeah, also in quite a great form, but maybe also it's new for him and now playing on that master level in the current World Championship. He made it to stage 6, so also a very good run that he had there. Then we have Danny Boy 14, who you might also already have seen on my channel. Here, yeah, is here playing in the Master Division, and in the last 2 seasons of the International Championship, he played both times in the Master Division, got one time 4th place, one time 5th place. So he has been playing on a very solid master level, and in the Intermezzo Championship in the last season he managed to win his group, will also be playing the Master Division on the Intermezzo Championship in the next season, so there might be a chance that we might be meeting there. So at the moment he is performing on a very solid master level. Let's see if maybe he can step it up even more and be in one of the contenders to get the promotion. And in the World Championship he made it to stage 5, so the same as I. And then we have Takusto, and Takusto is maybe, yeah, is a player who has been playing very solidly in the last 2 international championship seasons. He finished at the 4th position last season with 20 points, then in the 3rd position 2 seasons ago with 19 points, so has performing very well there, but is maybe also a player who is not 100% consistent. We will maybe soon see it when we take a look at the Glicko rating, but for example in the last Intermezzo Championship season he played in silver, but of course, or he managed to win his group, so he did play quite well there. And in the current World Championship he actually already got eliminated in stage 3, so I think it's a player who can play on a very high level, but maybe is sometimes lacking the consistency. But in the last 2 international championship seasons he played very well, and actually 2 seasons ago I played also in Master in the International Championship season, and 3 out of the players of the group were in my group: Takusto, Danny Boy, and Grozz. And all of them, of course, finished before me as I was relegated. So, yeah. Yeah, so that as a quick introduction to the players. And now let's maybe take a quick look at the Glicko ratings of my opponents. Also, before I forget to mention it, Danny Boy has, of course, also his own YouTube channel where he isn't uploading regularly, but sometimes he will just out of nothing drop a very interesting strategic discussion, deep dive kind of videos, so definitely check out his channel. And also Martin Peucheur, of course, has sometimes used the occasion when and maybe when playing in on the finals of the World Championship in the last 2 times, and uploaded a video. So yeah, definitely check out all of those channels. And let's take a look at the ratings at the moment out of the players in the group. Martin Peucheur, despite maybe in Intermezzo and International Championship not performing ideally in the last season, still is in a very good position in the ranking, is in the 8th position, and is the highest ranked player in the group, followed by Grozz, who, as said, is a player in great form, who just got ranked up to Grandmaster and is the 2nd highest rated player, 1 position in the rating before me. I'm at the moment at the 14th position, not ideal, but my performances recently just haven't been that great. And then we have Eepogi on the 20th position, also a very high rated player. Allfather with his good performances recently, also with 30 points on the 30th position in the Glicko ranking. Danny Boy on the 39th position, and then we have Takusto, who is on the 85th position, so a little bit behind, maybe as said because he is not as consistent, but he can still perform on a very high level as we have seen in the last 2 international championship seasons. Also, we can maybe quickly take a look at the 3 and 4 player ratings, as those are the player counts that are played in the International Championship. In the 3 player ratings, I am actually still quite high on the 2nd position. Martin Peucheur is a bit lower on 13th, Grozz is also a bit lower on 19th position, and then Eepogi is also a bit lower, so all of those maybe the 3 player game could be a bit of their weak spots. Danny Boy looks like he's a bit better in 3-player games, while Allfather a bit weaker and Takusto relatively similar. And then for the 4-player ratings, there you can see that I haven't been really performing great in 4-player games recently. Martar is there in the 5th position, Eepogi even at the 8th position, and Grozz at the 15th position. Allfather also quite strong at the 24th position. Takusto also a bit better, so it seems like maybe the opponents in my group are better in 4-player games than in 3-player games, at least according to the rating. Alright, but now without further ado, let's take a look at the first game, and when we just take a look at those ratings, it will be the game against the best rated players out of the group, against Grozz, Eepogi and Martar Pêcheur, so a very tough game already for the start, and I hope you're looking forward to it. And in this game against those strong players, I'm playing the last position, which sometimes can be a bit tricky. Let's see how I will manage to pull that one off. First of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders, and we have definitely some theater synergy in the game. Chaplin, Fleming, the Hollywood in H3, Bach in H2, so that could be a direction that you could go for, also with Gandhi to potentially hide behind. We have Steve Jobs and Sid Meier as lab leaders, Mandela is there, and also Churchill as well as the Manhattan Project, and of course Gandhi for the military. We have no spaceflight, no fast food chains, so some of the wonders where you can maybe score some points relatively easily are not in the game, so preparing for something like Hollywood could potentially be even more worthwhile. Then we have the ocean liner service, but no Maria in H2. We have the Suez Canal and James Cook, so some colonization payoff cards. We have Newton and Nobel as the science leaders. Darwin can also work nicely with some labs. And then James Watt is there, but no railroad. And Robespierre is the only military action leader. Joan of Arc is the only military action leader in H1. Nostradamus can help with the strength. We have Columbus and Eleanor as some nice transitional leaders. We have both Leonardo and Gutenberg and also Saladin. We have Universitas and Silk Road, we have Great Wall and Magic Castle, the 2 strength wonders, but not the 2 happy face illusion wonders are missing with St. Pete's and Forbidden City, so maybe more important to get those happy face illusion techs going. Alright, and now let's start taking a look at the game, and Grozz already doing an interesting decision here, goes for the Colosseum, which I think in 4-player games is a very solid wonder, and we can see it here. Grozz values it quite highly. Could have taken the Rome roads, could have taken Aristotle, and I probably would have decided differently, but my 4-player games recently have been very bad, so probably I should maybe learn something from that. And also the happy face from the Colosseum with no happy face solution wonders in H1 could also of course be a bit more worthwhile, even though of course it would also synergize quite nicely with the St. Peter's Basilica. Martar then uses the opportunity to get both a leader and a wonder, takes the Rome roads and Aristotle. Eepogi goes for the engineering genius, interestingly not for the Acropolis, instead takes the rich land, which will make it that he has a civil action behind, but has a lot of additional resources already in hand. Maybe wants to hope for a different wonder, either Stonehenge or maybe the Colossus. Maybe also leaving himself open to a potential early H1 wonder. And then for my turn, there are some different things that I could do. I could just grab the Stonehenge, but then some of those leaders might be gone. Alex with the Stonehenges, I don't know if I like that combination that much. There could be Boudica revealed as a potentially strong leader, but if she's not revealed, then Sansu and Caesar in last position without a synergizing wonder maybe can be fine, especially Sansu to search for some fitting events, but that wouldn't be too great. So here I made a decision to rather already commit to my leader, and out of the leaders on the row, I clearly, especially with playing on a later seat, like Ashoka the most, and the question here was then for me if I would like to take him either together with the yellow card or together with the Acropolis, and then maybe having a free civil action at the next turn with already having taken a wonder to then grab a yellow card. And there the question was mainly what wonder do I want to get. I have to expect, if I don't take the Stonehenge now, that it will be taken by Eepogi, who hasn't committed to a wonder yet. And with that, I can't expect to get that one. Then the only wonder left in the deck is the Colossus. And there is some synergy for the Colossus with the Suez Canal and James Cook, but also in H1 with Ashoka, transitional leaders are quite strong. With having the Colossus, Columbus and Eleanor get even stronger. So with that, I at the end was actually willing to take the risk of potentially missing out on an HA wonder, which could happen if the Colossus is not revealed. But as you can see, lots of cards are taken here, so there are only 2 cards remain in the deck, and with that I was willing to take that risk. If the Colossus is not revealed, at least there are both Universitas and Silk Road road, and I might be able to get an early H1 wonder. Taking the Acropolis, I think, would also be a fine call, but at the end I went with the Cultural Heritage, which normally is maybe not the greatest HA yellow card, but with Ashoka I think is perfectly fine, because you want to keep the card in hand anyway, ideally, and then Cultural Heritage is a card that I can at any point get rid of. And if you have something like Ridgeland, and after already having built the third mine, that can sometimes be just stuck in your hands. So with Ashoka, cards like Stockpile or Cultural Heritage, I think, get a lot more valuable. Now it's a Grozz turn. He has to decide between Moses and Alex, or potentially Sun Tzu for 2, but he just goes for Alex, wants to get the additional yellow token. Then it's Marta's turn. He will go for Aristotle and makes an interesting pick. And if you remember the World Championship game that we covered, there he as well grabbed an early iron for 3, very expensive. Here he delays his mine, so yeah, he seems to value those quite highly. But of course, again, he has some additional signs with Aristotle and can maybe go for a very strong early iron setup here. Then Eepogi goes for the Stonehenge, builds the third mine, increases his population, builds another step of the Stonehenge, isn't going for any leader, only Sun Tzu would have been available for 2. With that he is probably hoping to maybe get Boudica at the next turn going. And then with him grabbing the Stonehenge, it means that a Colossus is available for me. Eepogi could have also gone for the Colossus, but valued the Stonehenge more highly. And but with the Colossus being left for me, I will this turn go for that wonder. There's also the Machu Picchu coming down the road, but the first copy of Iron is already taken away. And with Ashoka, I don't want to be in a position where I maybe have to grab the Iron for 3 because I want to pair it with the Machu Picchu. And I do think for the Colossus there are some really great synergies with Columbus, Eleanor, and then Suez Canal and James Cook. So I was very happy with getting the Colossus here and was very happy that my gamble of not grabbing the Acropolis has now paid off. I draw 2 cards, my first tactic and an aggression. Grozz uses Alex immediately, builds a lab, takes Eleanor, and elects her, has a very early replacement leader for Alex, will get some additional draws. I think Eleanor also synergizes nicely with the third military action from the Colosseum. Martin seeds and opens the development of settlement. He will take the knights, make sure to get that first copy going, and scores another science with Aristotle. He maybe could have made a play where he tries to build an iron mine directly at the next turn. Instead he builds a bronze mine this turn and then can finish the Rome roads at the next turn to go up to 4 production, maybe increase his population without getting into consumption. But of course, the Rome roads take 4 civil actions. He has grabbed iron for 3, the knights for 2, so he might be a bit in a civil action depth here and has to is maybe a bit inflexible at the next turn. But he has the iron to go for some production, the knights to go for some military. So maybe there is nothing that he really needs to take. So it's maybe fine with just being spending now a lot of civil actions on the Rome roads at the next turn. Eepogi will indeed go for Boudica, got her a bit later, but still a leader that can produce some nice value, will go for the second lab and just uses the civil actions effectively with building another step on the Stonehenge. Now it's my turn, with the development of settlement being revealed, the only thing that I can really do in my civilization is build a lab, or potentially build a step of the Colossus, but I wanted to get the science production going. Then I have 3 civil actions left, and there is the potential to already activate the full Ashoka bonus. I certainly wanted to take the warfare here. I think a very solid tech, especially with the Colossus. It can be nice to have a third military action to just be in a position to keep more cards in hand after the Colossus draws, because it's always a shame if you have to discard most of those cards. And so I think the warfare is just a very nice tech and also will help me to activate the Ashoka bonus nicely during H1. And then it was a bit of a decision, do I just grab the Theology, then I have my Ashoka bonus up and running, I have cards in hand that I can just keep in hand, and then I can just focus on doing normal improvements while keeping all of those 3 cards in hand that I might need eventually, and get a very nice amount of value out of Ashoka. But It's still a bit expensive, of course, to grab the Theology for 2, even though there's no Pierre, and of course I might need a Happy Face solution at some point, but at the end I rather went with the Breakthrough. Some additional science can just be very valuable, maybe makes it more easily possible for me to invest into warfare without being too low in science, and so I was willing to miss out on the 1 food from Ashoka, but instead valued the 2 science more highly. But just grabbing the Theology here could also be a fine decision, I think, and just having already a Happy Face solution in hand. I draw 2 cards, the reds and the cultural influence. Grozz seeds, the development of agriculture is revealed. He will take the 2nd copy of iron, increases his population 2 times, which allows him to get out of corruption. At the next turn he can potentially go for 2 iron upgrades if he wants to. Martar this turn just finishes the Rome roads, increases his population, so has to get now just spend some civil actions on his civilization after having grabbed those techs for expensive. Eepogi will finish the Stonehenge and just grabs the Meiji Castle. I do think that Wonder can be quite strong in 4-player games, as there's most of the time some military stuff going on and you're just quite a bit safer if you have the Meiji Castle. So despite him still being on low production, he is still willing to invest or to commit to going for that Wonder. Now it is my turn, and while I'm playing Ashoka, who is normally a bit more of an economical focused leader, I still also have the Colossus, and with that I do think I have an interest in moving the deck forward, and with that I push the cultural influence, which might even be slightly bad for me, but Martar with the Rome roads and Grozz with the Colosseum don't have any natural culture production, only Eepogi might maybe get a bit more culture out of it, so I made the decision to seed it into the deck. The event revealed is the development of civil life, which I can use to increase my population. I then take the Theology, I get it now for a bit cheaper, in order to activate the Ashoka bonus. Getting Gen of Arc here for 1 civil action certainly also could be a possibility, but I think with having the Colossus I really wanted to leave myself open also with Suez and Cook in the game. I wanted to wait for Columbus here, and if I don't get him, then there are still some other leaders that I might hope for, so I was just not willing to go for Joan of Arc here, even though of course she's a very solid leader. Instead I grabbed the Theology, and then I just spent some civil actions in my civilization. I increased my population, I built a step of the Colossus. There's the Universitas coming down the row, which I do think with the additional resource production from Ashoka could be a very nice thing to invest into. Eepogi has the Meiji, for the others it might be quite expensive to take, and Grozz has the Colosseum, so I thought there is a very high chance that I get it at the next turn, and then I wanted to be prepared to take it. And I have a full hand, I can't really do anything else. The only thing I can do, apart from maybe developing the Theology, but I didn't want to do that commitment yet, and so I just played a Cultural Heritage, and thanks to the Breakthrough I still have the full Ashoka bonus ongoing. I keep the Fighting Band and the Reds, draw the Historic Territory, which I was happy to see, because having a backup colony in order to maybe without too much risk being able to go for a Columbus gamble with the Colossus is very nice to have. Grozz seeds, the development of religion is revealed. I think all of the players have some free population, or does Martar have one? Yes, he also has a bunch of them. And Grozz will now go for 2 iron upgrades, and interestingly takes the cartography for 2 civil actions. I mean, he has Eleanor, he wants to seed a lot, maybe he wants to seed some colonies and set up for a potential Suez. Martar seeds, I was happy to see that Universitas stays on 2 for him, making it more likely that he won't take it, and he will use the development of civil life to develop the Knights, takes also a copy of warfare, takes the rich land, increases his population 2 times. Then it's Eepogi's turn. He will see the development of crafts are revealed. Those might help him to maybe get the Meiji Castle going. He also takes a resource from Boudica. Will now make a switch to Nostradamus, a good time, with the event deck just having flipped. And then he increases his population, builds a step of the Meiji Castle, and he has just enough resources, thanks to the 1 also that he took from Boudica, to finish the Meiji Castle at the next turn. And now, it's my turn. I'm only on 1 strength, and nonetheless, during my turn, I'm one of the 2 strongest, and with that I was actually willing to push. Of course, the red's a bit tricky, but if I have knowledge about it, I can play around it, and so I was willing to put it into the deck. The event revealed being the knowledge of the ancients, which I was not too happy to see it, because I now need to build a warrior this turn to get out of corruption, and also I would have gotten more value out of it after my turn, because I will go for the Universitas this turn. And that plane hasn't changed, it's just maybe a little bit less clean. I still want to finish the Colossus, I want to go for the Universitas, I have a bunch of resources, and I just think that additional science production will be extremely helpful for me. And then the only way for me out of corruption with not being able to increase my population is to build a step and build a warrior. If the knowledge of the ancients would have been revealed after my turn, I would not need to build this warrior, and then I could maybe get with the one resource from the knowledge of the ancients already finish the Universitas at the next turn, but with that I might then finish it in 2 turns, which also could still be fine. I build a warrior, and now that I fulfill the tactic, I also go for the fighting band, giving me maybe at least a chance to even still be the strongest at my next turn, even though I have to see if I want to commit for the historic territory for seeding. There are even more resources revealed now with the new deposits, meaning that I actually do still now have the option to finish the Universitas at my next turn. Grozz, who already went for iron, gets the most resources out of it. We'll go for the cartography this turn, maybe a bit of an indicator that there are already some colonies in there, with him valuing it highly to get it already developed now, and then he gets out of corruption with finishing the Colosseum. Martin this turn goes for the iron, goes for a bunch of upgrades, builds a knight, builds a warrior, makes sure to be the strongest now, puts some pressure maybe on Grozz and also Eepogi to get a bit stronger. He also takes the alchemy, scoring another science with Aristotle. Eepogi has a lot of science saved up actually with the Stonehenge. Dark Ages would be very devastating for him, and to maybe make that a little bit less devastating, he now goes for the Code of Laws and the Monarchy. Has now 6 civil, 3 military actions, the 3rd military action also being very important for Nostradamus, finishes Imechi, builds a warrior, and with that is now at 4 cultural production, so the cultural influence could actually be a bit bad now that I've seeded. But no, he is now with those warriors at 7 strength and well prepared for strength events. I'm now the 2nd weakest, and I didn't want to push the historic territory into the deck, with still hoping that maybe I will be able to go for Columbus, though Martin also still hasn't committed to a leader. I thought about a trade routes agreement, but I just didn't see that I really need it in either form, and so I at the end skipped my politics phase. And in this turn I can, of course, with all of those resources, just finish the Universitas. And also I need to get a bit stronger. Martin is at 10 strength. I'm not at all prepared to defend against an aggression, but I have taken this warfare earlier on that I can now develop without a breakthrough to give me a bigger Ashoka bonus, and then I will build another warrior and increase my population, going up to 7 strength, and with that being completely safe from any aggressions, even with having no defense cards. Instead of increasing my population, I could have also taken another card, but I felt like being a bit more civil action efficient is the better call here. I don't know how quickly I will use the Elven Growth. I mean, I might use it in the theology. The cultural heritage might be nice to have, but my science production is fine now. I don't really want to grab the drama, even though it could be fine for Bach, but I wasn't willing to spend a civil action for that at the moment. And there could be something like Pestilence that I don't have knowledge about. Rats are only in the next deck. I have knowledge about them not being revealed before my next turn. But for the Pestilence, it could be good to get this repop. Also maybe for something like Reign of Terror, if Grozz now manages to get stronger, even though I was hoping that it might be difficult for him, with maybe Swordsman being the only real way to get stronger and them being on 3 for him. I draw 2 cards, thanks to having developed a warfare. I draw the Dark Ages and the Reign of Terror, so the Dark Ages are not being the current deck. Grozz is not willing to take the Swordsman for that expensive, instead goes for an Alchemy upgrade, increases his population, goes for another warrior, copies the Legion tactic, is now at 7 strength, so is safe from any aggressions, but remains the weakest for now. And Martin is actually trying an aggression against him. Grozz had 3 defense cards, but of course, no, he had only 3 cards in hand, so he kind of needed to use the defense card, couldn't save that one, so he has 3 military actions, but he can defend that one, but loses the colonization cards, with him having gone for the cartography, and maybe there are some colonies coming that could be quite hurtful for him. Martin, getting another science with Aristotle, with grabbing that Code of Laws, he develops it, increases his population, builds a 2nd lab to get a bit more science production going. Eepogi seeds and a wealthy territory is revealed, and you can see here that I do quite a bit of an interesting bid, because I'm actually willing to bid 4 for this with 2 warriors, and for a wealthy territory that is somewhat expensive, especially because I do not have a clear plan on where those resources go into immediately. If you're in a situation where the 6 resources will just allow you finishing a wonder quicker or something, then the value of that colony can increase quite a lot. That's not the case here. Nonetheless, I was willing to send 2 warriors, and that mostly had the reason that I thought that I have quite a potential for Suez here. Of course, for the moment I don't know if I get Columbus or not, but Mortar at his next turn would have to grab him for expensive, and probably would grab him only if he has a fitting colony. And so I was hoping that I will get Columbus, and if I get Columbus, now that I've won a colony, I have that colony, I have the colony from Columbus, and if I then at some point draw another H2 colony, I have a Suez Canal with 3 colonies ongoing, which is quite strong, and now that my opponents have no colony, I maybe also have higher chances to get the Suez Canal. So yeah, with having that in mind, I was willing to go for that bid, but of course it's still a bit expensive, but there are swordsmen coming down the road that I'm guaranteed to get, and with going for those I can actually go up to 8 strength at my next turn, so I can end my turn with not being the weakest. Eepogi goes for increasing his population, takes some yellow cards. With taking all of those cards, the swordsman will actually drop down to 1 civil action for me, which I was happy to see. Interestingly, he develops the swordsman but is not willing to go for any upgrades. Could have maybe done some now, using some military actions now instead of H2, but maybe he was hoping that the H could still be in H1 at his next turn. Maybe he wants to use the patriotism for those upgrades, but maybe at least one upgrade could have been interesting. Now it is my turn and I need to rebuild some strength, so I go for the swordsman, I build one, I upgrade one, and then I also kind of need to get out of corruption. There's only one way to do it after this, and that is to go for theology upgrade, and at least the happy face will soon be relevant when I lose the 2 yellow tokens and increase my population one more time. Then also I will be at exactly 3 food at the next turn, meaning that hopefully before the next event deck will flip, I at the next turn can increase my population, and I might be very nicely prepared for the reds that are coming. Also, I'm at 8 strength now, not being the weakest, which is nice. I still have a good amount of science left, meaning that I hopefully will get into a government form without any big problems. The downside of this turn is, of course, that I don't get any Ashoka bonus, but yeah, there was just no way around it this time. So Ashoka not working perfectly, but still gave me a bit of additional food and resources, which helped me finishing Universitas, getting now another pop out. And yeah, and then I was hoping that I might have a chance to get Columbus and maybe draw something nice with the Colossus. I draw 1 card, the Legion Tactic. That could actually be useful for me if I go for 1 more swordsman. Grozz this turn goes for the irrigation, goes for a bunch of upgrades, just upgrades his economy. He has now a full H1 economy going, which sometimes can be running out of steam at some point, so let's see how he will manage with that. There's another colony revealed. Ideally, of course, I would again try to avoid that one of my opponents wins it, but I just can't send even more units away. I am relatively low in population, so this time I just passed. I think I would have preferred it if Grozz would have won the colony at the end. Eepogi now wins it just for worry, at least all of those colonization cards are gone. But now that Eepogi has won it, he's playing right in front of me, so he could just take the Suez Canal away while I'm playing in front of Grozz. So I was thinking that it could have been preferable for me if maybe Grozz would have won that colony. Mortar will go for Gutenberg. That means I have a shot at getting Columbus, who is still in the deck, so I won't be able to get him going quickly. Mortar will go for Gutenberg, uses him to develop the alchemy, goes for an upgrade, increases his population, and takes the reserves. Now it's Eepogi's turn. It is indeed still H1. At his turn he seeds. End of Array is revealed, which I was happy to see because I'm actually one of the 2 strongest, so I gain some additional food and resources, which is very welcome. Eepogi then goes for the alchemy, goes for a bunch of upgrades, plays the patriotism, builds the swordsman, goes for an upgrade, and yeah, takes the iron. Has now some strong science production going, has the iron in hand, but maybe can also go for coal if that isn't a row early, and then with that could take the first copy of coal potentially away from me, which could be problematic. It's my turn. I am not the weakest. I will actually get some draws, and you might see something interesting in my hand. I have actually drawn the Vast Territory 2, which is of course a really strong colony to get for Columbus. I was very happy about that, and at the next turn I then will get Columbus going, as that will just be great getting that colony. I'm not the weakest, and I will actually be the strongest after my turn, and with that I was willing to put the Reign of Terror into the deck. I thought about the international negotiations as well, but I know that it will take a while, and who knows if I'm the strongest by then, so I rather wanted to put an H1 strength event into the deck. The terrorism could be an idea, but with Mortar getting some Culture with Gutenberg activations, but it just felt like it might be a bit awkward playing around that, and so I seeded the Reign of Terror at the end. The cultural influence is revealed, so I also knew what was on top. Yes, at the end, Eepogi gets the most culture out of it, but at least I get one more than Grozz and Mortar per sure. And then the event deck will flip. I know that reds are coming, I know that a strength event is coming, so I will increase my population. I need to increase it now with the reds potentially coming, otherwise I maybe could have played around a turn where I take 3 food from the foray, I don't increase my population, get an additional pop out at the next turn, but with the reds coming that's not a possibility, meaning I kinda have to take 3 resources from the foray. And then I will increase my population, build a swordsman. I will actually reveal the legion tactic that I've drawn. This is of course a bit costly, missing out on H2 draws, but it makes me the strongest and I think that should be worthwhile. And then I have 3 civil actions left, and I could just grab Columbus, but of course I will get him for cheaper at the next turn, and I can't elect him, so I don't get a colony more quickly. And at the end, I just went with taking the rich land and a breakthrough. Knights, of course, could be a consideration. There are quite a bunch of players without knights, so the cavalryman might be more contested, but nonetheless, without having a tactic for them at the moment, I wasn't willing to invest a civil action into them. And if I take knights and Richland, I have only 1 civil action left, and it's difficult to choose what I want to take, and missing out on the Richland I think would be quite annoying. Instead of the breakthrough, I consider the engineering genius, because if I indeed get the Suez Canal or maybe the Ocean Liner, that could be a very useful yellow card. But it's just not certain if I will find a nice chance to use it, while the breakthrough will be used guaranteed, and the science, even though I have quite a bunch of science, could still be useful, as I still need a government form and coal and so on. And at the moment, with only being on 4 civil actions, also difficult for me to grab wonders for expensive, making it even more difficult to then make sure to use the engineering genius, so I think the breakthrough is the better pick here. Irrigation may be also an idea, but at least Grozz has committed already to irrigation, and so I rather just wanted to have the science here. I draw 1 card, the Civil Unrest. I discarded the historic territory, which maybe could be a mistake, because if at the next turn, or maybe also the second next, I have Columbus in play, and there's the Suez Canal, and I have now only the vast territory 2, committing to the Suez is a bit of a gamble, while if I kept historic 1, I could have colonized the H1 colony with Columbus, and then the H2 colony with the Suez, or the other way around. But I also felt like all those other events could have some potential. Terrorism could still potentially get interesting in international negotiations as well, and so I was hoping that maybe I draw another H2 colony, and it's also at this point not clear if I have a chance of getting the Suez. Grozz this turn has a very strong turn ahead of him, and a turn that got presented by him from the card row. None of those cards were revealed at my turn, and now Robespierre and Republic drop. But of course, he has only 4 civil actions, but now Eleanor comes into play after taking Robespierre. He is now at 3 civil actions, he takes the Republic, he has used all of his civil actions, but in order to do a Robespierre revolution, of course, you need only all of your military actions, meaning you cannot do a revolution, take the knights, increase his population, goes for a food upgrade, and that just is an extremely big boost. He's of course now having a leader that is not doing that much for him for quite a long time, but nonetheless that's just such a big boost that I think he has to go for that, and I think it's very, very strong for him. I was not happy to see him sitting now at 7 civil actions, while I'm still stuck on 4. I was hoping to also get a government form soon, so I was not too happy to see that. Now it's Mortar's turn. He seeds, opens the vast territory. I bid 5, which would be quite risky. Sending 2 swordsmen away would leave me vulnerable to an aggression, and I also didn't really want to win it for that price, but I was just 100% certain that Mortar will bid an army for that one, and with that I also wanted to make sure that he at least has to send an army, and if I win it, then I just need to hope that Eepogi doesn't have an aggression, and if he doesn't have one, then that could actually still turn out to be nice, winning the colony and maybe making a potential Suez even bigger. But at the end, as expected, Mortar wins it, and he has at least he has to send an army away. Mortar will increase his population, rebuilds the army, actually builds a 4th mine with the additional pop that he now got from the colony, and with the bigger yellow bank, so he will now be on 8 resource production. He also uses Gutenberg after also having taken the architecture, which might help him to finish some wonders. He also is of course now a player who could be competing for the Suez with having won this colony now. Eepogi Seeds. Sadly, no strength events revealed for now, with me being the strongest, but the Reds are also at least a somewhat fine event for me with losing no food at all. Eepogi is not willing to wait for coal or anything any longer, wants to use the civil actions and gets the iron production started with the rich land. He can go for 2 more upgrades at his next turn, and is then also well prepared with the engineering genius to go for strong wonders like Ocean Liner and Suez. It's my turn, I am the strongest, so I want to push. Terrorism still unclear, international negotiations also unclear, because at the moment I'm stuck on my current amount of population. Actually not, the immigration has been revealed, which gave everyone additional population, I think apart from Mortar, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so I will get an additional pop, but nonetheless, at the point when the international negotiations are revealed, I just don't know at all if I will be the strongest, especially because I will go for a bit of a risky turn in terms of not taking military tax, and with that I just went for the civil unrest. The Reign of Terror is revealed, Grozz at least gets a bit punished here and loses a population. And as you can see, I go for the Conmon here. But I still had to think about it, because there are 2 copies of cannons in a row, the cavalryman could be contested, so not taking a cannon here is quite a risk. And I thought about just taking Columbus, electing him, taking cannons, for example. And now if I go for the Conmon, I have 2 civil actions left, and I don't want to miss out on Columbus, it's just too much value, so then I miss out on the cannons. But I think it's also a risk to not take the Conmon here. Mortar might take it, and then I don't know when I will get the next government forms, and being stuck on 4 civil actions can just be extremely annoying, so I think it's a risk either way, and at the end I went with the Conmon. At least I have a lot of military actions, I have a fine amount of strength for now, I will build another swordsman this turn, and so I think that is just a better play here, going for the Conmon, developing it, taking Columbus. Sadly I can't take Columbus and a leader or something, but I probably want to elect him also now immediately. I was hoping that maybe one of those leaders like Newton or Nobel could still be available for me at the next turn to get a quick replacement going, but I just elected Columbus, build a swordsman to get out of corruption, being at 13 strength even now, and at the next turn, or whenever it pleases me, I can use Columbus to get my colony. I was still hoping to draw maybe another H2 colony, so that I can, without any problems, go for the Suez Canal. Instead of electing Columbus, I could have thought about taking Rifleman or maybe Justice System or Opera for Bach, but I just wanted to elect Columbus to have the option to already use him at the next turn. Sadly, that leaves Grozz, and because of that I also consider taking the Rifleman and now away, because I know that 2 of my opponents really would like to get those Riflemen. But now sadly Grozz can take them, can develop them for cheaper with the Colosseum, and that makes him, instead of being the weakest, he's now the strongest, takes the cannons, the reserves, the Opera, meaning that sadly all of those leaders drop down quite a bit in the row, making it unlikely that I will get one of them. Mortar uses Gutenberg one more time, and of course now with being out of activations, it's a perfect timing for him to go for a replacement leader. He chooses to go for Newton. Nobel would have given him more science and a bit of strength for now, but Newton saves some civil actions and has some potential in if he gets journalism or maybe computers in H3, so he goes for Newton here and takes reserves in Wave of Nationalism. Eepogi now goes for Nobel, so all of the leaders are now taken, but also meaning that I can now very freely choose which H2 leader I want to get, as all of my opponents have already committed to a leader. Eepogi completes his upgrades, takes the cannons and the patriotism. Interestingly, does take the patriotism over, for example, 2 out of those cards, but then he would have had a full hand, and maybe that could have caused some issues. Now it is my turn. As you can see, I actually use Columbus. Of course, it depends on the turn that I'm doing. I considered taking the Ocean Liner here. It's just such a strong wonder, and when taking a look at Grozz's situation, I think it would give him a further boost. He has only H1 upgrades, and I do think that can be problematic, but if you get a strong wonder in addition to that, I think it can work quite fine, and I could try to take it away here, but maybe I should do it, but I can do some other very fine stuff for myself, and with not going for the Ocean Liner, I still leave myself open for Suez, which might for myself be the even stronger wonder at this point. and it would be a very big investment here, so I was not willing to do it. In 4-player games you can't go too far in terms of hate drafting, and I think for myself I have a better turn than grabbing the Ocean Liner. I grabbed a Cavalryman, a very important tech for myself, with having missed out on the first 2 copies of cannons. I think I can't allow myself to miss out on that one. I take the scientific method. I have already some fine science production, but of course you always can improve it even more. So I'm now at 6 science production. I will increase my population. I could of course go even for another upgrade, but I'm not that high on resources. I might want to go for the sewer, so I rather wanted to save up some resources, which is possible thanks to the additional plus from the wealthy territory, and instead I took the urban growth, which will help me to get a cheap second lab upgrade going. And yeah, so I just preferred that turn over going for the Ocean Liner. I could have not used Columbus, maybe taken another card, as I then would not be able, and also it would not be needed to increase my population, but I felt like already increasing the population and using the politics action now could just be very fine. I draw some cards, the first tactic and also a colonization card, as well as the scientific operation pact. Grozz seeds and the raiders are revealed. I'm not part of that, so the strength events have been going quite nicely for me, with winning foray not being part of anything bad. Grozz takes the Ocean Liner as expected, takes the efficient upgrade, the architecture, develops the architecture, and takes the organized religion. Now it's Martar's turn. He interestingly goes for the Kremlin. There's also a Suez Canal, maybe showcasing that he doesn't have a strong colony, or maybe showcasing that he values it, that he can maybe... I guess he could have also finished the Suez Canal this turn, but he also has already some strong resource production, so he goes for the Kremlin instead, which actually causes him some uprising issues, but he has a way to fix those with playing the reserves for food and increasing his population, and then he takes the journalism, which will be nice for him to have with Newton. Eepogi seeds and a scientific breakthrough is revealed, giving everyone even more science. Grozz is the only one who only gets 4 out of that event. And sadly, Eepogi takes the Suez. So as I feared it when Eepogi won the developed territory, takes it away, but on the other hand I have not drawn an H2 colony and I probably wouldn't have gone for that gamble. I mean, Eepogi in the game where we did the triple commentary went for, I would say, a very greedy Suez gamble. Maybe I should go for something similar, but yeah, I might have passed on that, especially because there's also a copy of coal that I can go for, so it doesn't hurt me as much as Informers of Denial, because I wouldn't probably have gone for it, but Eepogi has now the chance to go for it. He plays the cultural heritage and builds the first step using his H1 yellow cards before he potentially might lose them. Now it is my turn, and as you can see, I actually offer the Scientific Operation Pact. I think that has just some very, very big potential, and so I wanted to get it going. Eepogi, of course, has a lot of science saved up, so there's the potential that that pact will go wrong for me. But one thing that he doesn't have that much, at least at the moment, are civil actions. So with this lack of civil actions and also not having that many techs in hand, I was hoping that he won't be able to develop that many techs, at least in the near future. He might be able, of course, to go for an H3 government form at some point, but at least then he's investing a lot of science into only one tech. And with that I was hoping that it was fine to offer it to him. I thought about Martar as well, but against Newton it can always be a bit creepy, as Martar definitely has no issues with civil actions in regard of developing techs. And Grozz I also thought about, but maybe he would have rejected it, even though I thought maybe he could have accepted it because of his low very techs, but he has a lot of civil actions, he has a lot of cheap techs, so he might actually also get quite a lot of value, maybe in short term even more than Eepogi, and so at the end I offered it to Eepogi. Now it's my turn, Suez is gone, and in order to fix my resource production I kinda need to go for the coal, so I develop it, I go for an upgrade. And then it was a bit of a question, because I still need a new leader, and I ideally of course would like to get the leader going as quickly as possible. Darwin is a bit tricky with my theology, especially when I will lose the 2 yellow tokens at the end of the age, so it was mainly a decision, do I go for Cook this turn or for Bach maybe at the next turn, but there's only 1 copy of Opera left, so I might only get a 2 culture production for him, at least for a while. And Cook would give me an additional culture production that I might already get this turn when I elect him. But there's one big issue, and that is that the last copy of cannons is in the row, and it would just be painful to miss out on that one. I mean, the mobile artillery is a tough tactic to work with, but it just is very strong to be flexible. And at least if I go for Bacher the next turn, there is the potential that I get the Opera or maybe an early copy of movies and that he then actually gives me quite a bunch of value. And at the end here, I was not willing to give up on the cannons, even though I also kind of would have liked to just get Cook going already this turn and increase my culture production. And yeah, so it hurts a bit also not taking the breakthrough. But at the end it was still, I think, fine. I also don't get a lab upgrade going, but I have some very fine science production for now. And here I maybe make a mistake for my discard. I mean, it's hard to call it a mistake, but I just thought I want to stay flexible for my events. I want to keep the tactic, I want to keep the defense cards. Iconoclasm could potentially be interesting. Terrorism could potentially be interesting. The strength event could potentially be interesting. But I mean, I might not go for all of those events anyway, so I think maybe I should have committed here. Maybe I'm also only saying that in hindsight, because the thing being is that I will now discard the war over technology in the raid, thinking that I might just focus on going for those economy upgrades. So I discard those aggressive cards, and then I draw a card that I'm extremely happy about, the defensive army, but at the same time I was also quite annoyed that I didn't keep this war over technology, because I actually have enough military actions, population, resources, science in order to declare a war and go for 2 defensive armies at the next turn, but sadly I have discarded that war, which I was very annoyed, especially if the age doesn't end. I can get another pop out, and then I could really put some big pressure on my opponents, which I think should be worth it, even if it comes at a cost of delaying the economy a bit longer. So yeah, I was a bit unhappy to see that, but at the same time, of course, also very happy to have the tactic, as it is the perfect tactic for me, and I also was very happy now about my decision of taking the cannons. So yeah, of course it's nice to stay flexible, and all of those events could have some potential, but just having an H2 war in hand, there are not that many of them, only 4, and if you have one and you have just some ways how you could potentially get some strength and maybe just having enough population, I think it's just worthwhile keeping a war in hand, especially with that many military actions to keep them. And yeah, I sadly got punished for that. However, I was a little bit less angry with myself when I saw the next event revealed. That is actually the Pestilence, because now in order to go for 2 cannons I would need to delete something. Maybe it could still be worthwhile, but maybe then with the alternative being to just go for some quick upgrades and get more value out of those, maybe I actually wouldn't have gone for the war now. But without a Pestilence, I think if the age doesn't end before my turn, I would very, very likely go for that war over technology. Now I might not have gone for it, and I was a little bit less angry about myself with that. Grozz goes for upgrading his last mine with the efficient upgrade. With doing that for free, he still has enough resource to finish the ocean liner, which he will do after taking breakthrough and cavalryman. Also, he plays the reserves for resources. Martar offers the international trade agreement to Eepogi, so Eepogi gets another strong pact. Martar wants to have the additional resource production, which is somewhat interesting. He has already had 8. And his farms aren't upgraded yet, so I was thinking that maybe it could have been worthwhile for him to take the food here, but maybe he thinks he is fine and the resources might be even doing more for him. He develops the team sports, develops the riflemen, uses them to get some additional strength, plays the reserves and increases his population, reveals the conquistadors, making him the strongest. Eepogi goes for finishing the Suez Canal. I was interested to see what colony he's having, and same as in the video with Todd Silence and me, he has actually the wealthy territory, and maybe this time had it already in hand, but who knows, maybe he draw it again after taking the Suez. Yeah, he has now 8 resource production, which is quite strong, but there probably could have been stronger colonies for him, so I was fine with seeing that wealthy too. Also, he takes only 1 card from the row, meaning it's still H2 for me. It wouldn't have made a, or it would have made, no, now that the Pestilence was revealed, it wouldn't have made a big difference, because I could also increase my population if the H should end. So maybe it could have been even better to already get some H3 draws at the end of my turn, especially now that I have a nice tactic. So at this point, maybe even slightly bad for me, but maybe also not the biggest difference, even though getting more H3 draws, of course, can be quite important. This turn I go for Bach. Darwin is just a bit problematic, and Bach at least has some potential. Either this copy of Opera will make it its way around, or I get movies, or worst case I just get a leader who produces me 2 culture, which is also better than nothing. I'm not the weakest. I could just go for some upgrades, maybe another coal upgrade, but when we take a look at the remaining events, and here are actually only the ones shown that were already revealed, but I also had some more knowledge about some that I discarded, for example the Dark Ages, the Historic Territory, meaning there are actually quite some strength events left, and the events seeded here were seeded, one by Grozz, one by Martin, and both of them, especially also Martin, made an effort into getting stronger, and with that and with those events being left in the deck, I thought it could be worthwhile to maybe delay the coal upgrades for another turn in order to go for one cannon this turn with the one free population that I have left, and reveal the tactic using my 2 free military actions, making myself the strongest and maybe hopefully getting rewarded for that with some strength events. Then I have 2 civil actions left. I could use one of them to upgrade my lab, but again I have fine science production, I have the pact ongoing, and it might be more important to get my coal upgrades going as quickly as possible, and I also still have to go for those selective breeding upgrades, so I felt like I rather wanted to take 2 of those yellows, maybe being able to go for 2 coal upgrades, maybe getting some quick selective breeding upgrades at the next turn, and I was willing to wait with the lab upgrade. Maybe it could also be an option with Bach to upgrade this lab to an opera at some point, so I at the end was willing to not increase my science production even further. Now I will get my Colossus draws, which of course I was interested to see. First of all, I get another colonization card, and then I get another colonization card, so I am now quite nicely prepared for colonies, and also the impact of variety, which is not that great at the moment, but who knows, maybe I can make it better. Also the mechanized army potentially could be interesting. Also, we are now at the beginning of age 3, so time to take a quick look at the overview, and we can see that Eepogi has the Culture lead at the moment, with having had Nostradamus plus some production from his wonders. He has a lot of science saved up. He is only in 6 civil actions, same as me, so we are a bit limited in that regard. He has 8 resource production, but I will catch up in that regard soon. I have a strong yellow bank. Martin, as soon as he gets a government form, will get a boost in civil actions, but he hasn't the most science saved up, so he has some issues here, needs to fix his happy faces, still needs to get some food production going, needs to get a government form, so that might slow him down a little bit, meaning he has some challenges, maybe not the greatest position here, but still 9 resource production can carry him a lot. And Grozz, I think, has a very solid economical position. However, his resource production is somewhat limited compared to all of his opponents. Mine will be increased soon with being on iron mines. So he has a lot of civil action. He has the ocean liner, so that's great. Great things, but a slow resource production could maybe be problematic to maybe get a strong culture engine going, but at least he has the architecture. He is prepared for some H3 tactics, so I do think he has a strong position here. Eepogi has the culture lead that might carry him, and I have at least Bach and now the option to go for some strong coal upgrades. So I was thinking I don't have the greatest position, but definitely a position to work with, and still everything possible for everyone here. Grozz opens the border conflict, so I got rewarded here for making sure to be the strongest, getting 3 additional resources. Grozz maybe also feeling like resources could be a limiting factor, goes actually for an additional iron mine. He has the ocean liners, so it might be fine for him. He then develops the organized religion, takes a bunch of cards. Now it's Martin's turn. He will seed, and another strength event being revealed. I was very happy, and yeah, I got a bit lucky with the timing of those, and also rewarded for making the decision and taking a look at the remaining events. Always a good thing to do. Martin fixes his happy faces, develops the selective breeding for free, gets his food production going, takes the revolutionary idea, the opera, so he takes that one away, maybe from me, but also of course could be nice for him at some point, and he takes the engineering genius. Eepogi seeds and opens the popularization of science. Together with Eepogi I actually get the most out of that event. He will increase his population, builds an additional farm to get more food production going, and takes the air forces for 3, takes the organized religion, but hasn't developed any techs, which is nice for me, but also still has lots of science saved up, so I was worried that at some point he might get a lot of value out of the pact, but for the moment he hasn't developed any tech, so my guess with him being limited in regards of civil actions into this pact, at least short term, has so far gone right for me. Now it's my turn, I'm the strongest, and there is, especially with me maybe at some point being able to build another cannon, definitely the chance that I might be the strongest for a little while longer, and with that I make the decision to seed the refugees, hoping that at least I hopefully won't be the weakest, and there might be a chance to get another population out, so I seeded that event into the deck. The event revealed is the civil unrest, so I also knew about that one, and with that was even more eager to push, as Grozz and Eepogi will now lose a blue token and 4 culture. And this turn I made a decision to just upgrade my 2 coal mines, grab the selective breeding, and grab the air forces. I could have also developed the selective breeding, but then I would only be able to go for 1 upgrade if I also would want to grab the air forces, so instead I did not develop it. Also not developing anything for the pact. We both are saving up a lot of science for now, but at the next turn I can go for the selective breeding with not having committed to it. At least I leave myself open for mechanized agriculture, which could be a nice improvement for me, and I just wanted to have the air force. It's already the 2nd copy, so it's nice to have those in hand and could even give me some military potential. And the military might actually be an interesting direction to go for, at least with what Vlada is presenting me here. I drawn a modern army, for which I only need the modern infantry to make that one work. I have a war and I have the impact of strength. So I have, of course, Bach. If I get movies, I can also go for a more peaceful approach, but especially if I get the modern infantry soon, that could give me quite some potential. I was very happy to have those cards in hand. Also, I have the 2nd most culture, and those are, I think, fine things for me at the moment. Grozz seeds, the developed territory has been revealed. I was willing to only bid 1 swordsman, but that is already quite a heavy bid with my colonization cards, but not enough to win it, as at the end Grozz is able to win it. At least he has to send a rifleman away, but I think a nice deal for him. He will develop some techs, builds a cannon, copies my tactic that I revealed earlier. I could have waited with revealing it, but I just wanted to get the strength going, which also got rewarded with those strength events. He then builds an opera and gets a quick replacement for Robespierre, who isn't doing that much. I mean, the additional military action still being nice, but now he gets some happy faces and additional culture production. Now it's Martin's turn. He goes for the satellites, interestingly develops them. He is in a position where he still needs a government form, and interesting that he's willing to spend those the science and the satellites, but maybe he knows about some colonies, and also it makes him the strongest for now. And there is actually the refugees coming, which I seeded, so it might reward him. Also, he has a relatively full hand, so maybe it's just to develop something anyway, and maybe he felt like the satellites is the thing that he could develop that is giving him the biggest value. Then he takes a revolutionary idea, plays a revolutionary idea, goes for Gandhi, and takes another revolutionary idea. And with that many revolutionary ideas, of course, he could, even at the next turn, now still go for a government form if he wants to. And also he has now Gandhi, so he can maybe go for some more greedy lines if he wants to. Now it's Eepogi's turn. He seeds, and a national bride is revealed, which gives him even more culture. He goes for Steve Jobs this turn, and I do think that is a leader that has some big potential for him. There will be Nobel Prizes. He has tons of science saved up. He has some good resource production. He's only maybe not the most civil actions to easily develop all of those techs, but he might be in a position where he can easily go for Nobel Prize every turn. And from now on, the Scientific Cooperation Pact, of course, might be very strong for him, but could also be very strong for me still, with also not having developed that many techs so far. So Eepogi goes for Steve Jobs. He develops the air forces, develops the cannons, plays the patriotism, builds a cannon, goes for an upgrade which gets him out of corruption, copies the tactic, putting him at 17 strength, takes the mechanized agriculture, which I think might at least partly be a hate draft, but also is completely reasonable for him, especially just as it being a cheap tech which he needs. He needs to grab some techs for one, ideally the cheaper the better, so I think it's maybe even best for him, also just for him, but of course he also denies it from me, and I now probably have to go for the selective breeding if I want to get some food production going. Now it's my turn. I'm not the strongest for the refugees, but I also don't get stronger this turn, and I can't really go for the war of a culture. I mean, maybe I could go for declaring it, building a cannon and an air force, but it would be a bit of a commitment, and there is actually a copy of movies on the row, so I felt like maybe I should rather go in that direction. And so I seeded the international negotiations, and the refugees are revealed, so Martin's satellites have actually paid off quite well now. Eepogi will lose the population. As you see, I go for the movies. For now, I don't know when or whether I will get the modern infantry. It's also still quite a big investment and build up that I would need to do. And if I don't get them early, it could be tricky to pull a war off. Martha now has Gandhi, Eepogi has Dimitri Castle, Grozz can easily also have some h3 tactics, so I just felt I should not, even though those are great cards, I should not commit too heavily into that direction. In a 4-player game, I feel like often going for a more peaceful approach can sometimes be the right decision, because if you go for a military heavy approach, you might get an edge against those players that you can punish, but you rarely can punish all 3 players. I thought with the movies being available here and also the Hollywood, as said at the beginning of the video, maybe one of the few wonders that you can really get a lot of culture in this mix. So I felt like preparing for Hollywood could also be very interesting. However, it's still a bit of a tricky turn. What at the end I thought I kind of wanted to do is to develop the movies and now go for an upgrade from labs to movies. The thing is, there are a lot of different things that I could do. There's an engineering which could really save me a lot of resources in order to go for more movies. But it's also a bit of a science investment. Now, after upgrading one lab with the urban growth to movies, I still could easily switch into a more military heavy direction. But if I invest even more science into the engineering, it could get a bit more tricky. Nonetheless, it has some huge potential for me here, and maybe I could have just taken the engineering here, developed it, and go for an upgrade to movies and get some culture production going. Problem, of course, being that I also still need some more food production. If I want to go for some military pressure, I also need more population, and I think I kind of need to get that population going now. So just going for 2 selective breeding upgrades after the upgrade, which I will now do. So already a spoiler, I won't go for the engineering, but I could now just go for 2 selective breeding upgrades. But I was also looking at Flaming, who might not be ideal, especially that is already the 2nd copy of Multimedia, it might be taken away, but nonetheless Flaming is the only leader left that synergizes with the Hollywood, and that could just be already reason enough to maybe go for him. He might be better for me at the end of age 3 than the other leaders. But the problem is Grozz has Chaplin, Martha has journalism and operas in hand. Those also could go for the Hollywood. It's not a given that I will get it, and at the moment at least Bach is fine. I have knowledge about the iconoclasm, and so at the end I was not willing to go for Flaming here. And at the end I indeed just go for the selective breeding. That scores me a Nobel Prize. I use the Scientific Cooperation Pact, and I go for 2 upgrades here. Which allows me even to get 2 pop out at the next turn. And that also has some other advantages, because at the next turn, maybe without too much sacrifices, I could declare a war if one of my opponents is not careful, because I have just enough food to get 2 pop, and I have just enough resources and military actions to declare war, build a cannon and an air force. And if someone is not careful, that could easily be a thing that I do without too much investment, put some pressure on my opponents. So I thought like that is another reason to just get those food upgrades going here, even though I also miss out on reserves and urban growth that all felt kind of bad, engineering. So I had to do some sacrifices, but I have not the most civil actions, and at the end those felt like the things that I needed to do the most. And at least I get a Nobel Prize, I get 9 cultural productions, so I'm starting to get a bit of a lead compared to Grozz and Martha at the moment. I keep all of those 3 important cards, plus the colonization cards. I draw the impact of colonies and agriculture, both seedable impacts, colonies even slightly good for me, and then also an aggression. Grozz Seeds opens the Cold War, again another strength event that I'm able to win in this game. I think the strength events have been going quite nice for me. 6 additional science helps me to further maybe get some nice value out of the Scientific Cooperation Pact. Grozz will increase its population, goes for the multimedia. It's a bit greedy here, especially because he also builds another opera, but takes the reserves, the urban growth, and the tanks. So he could be a candidate of maybe going for a war against here. Martha seeds and opens the arms industry, which now gives Grozz some additional resources again. So Grozz gets some help from there. I sadly only get 2 additional resources. Martha builds a journalism. Another journalism develops the opera, scores a Nobel Prize, builds an opera, and gets some really big culture production going here. So both Grozz and Martha are going for a bit of a greedy line. Martha, of course, has Gandhi to hide behind. Eepogi now will get the engineering, of course a great tech for him. He will also go for the multimedia, gets another Nobel Prize, increases his population, builds an air force, making him the strongest for now. And yeah, he indeed might be in a position to just score a Nobel Prize every turn. Of course, he gets now a lot of value out of this pact, but I just have better things to do with my politics action and cancelling it. And I also still am in a position to get some value out of the pact. And for my next turn, there was really the question on whether it could be an idea to go for a war here. Because I could, as said, declare the war, go for an air force, go for a cannon. The thing is, now Grozz has gotten some additional resource out of the arms industry, and he could potentially have entrenchments in hand. He could build 3 cannons, he could go for the strategy, reveal the tactic, and that would be enough to win. And if I would be somewhat guaranteed to win this war, I think I would have gone for it, but I was not willing to go for the investment just to lose the war by him having the entrenchments. And so I passed on going for the war here. The other players are not really targets that I can choose. So Grozz with the arms industry, maybe he was the one who put it into the deck, got somewhat saved here from a potential war that he could have gotten hit by. But yeah. And then instead of going for a war, I go for the impact of colonies, which seems like the best and safest impact to seed for now. And as you maybe noticed, first of all, the economic progress is revealed, so Grozz would have gotten even more stuff and could have maybe gone for even more strength. So I was very happy that I didn't go for that war. And now this turn I have a bit of a decision to make in which direction I want to go this game, because as you can see, there is now the copy of Modern Infantry in the row. I could just take it, develop it, go for a bunch of upgrades, and start really preparing for a war here. I might have a shot at getting Churchill to help me with the war. I think I did some calculations, and even though I have a lot of resources, I could be a bit short even, still, if I remembered correctly. I mean, going for 4 upgrades from Swordsman to Modern Infantry already takes 16 resources, and then I have only 5 left. I still need to build 2 cavalrymen, a cannon, 2 air forces if I want to go for 2 armies. Of course I could go for less, but then the question is, will it really be enough to get a big enough war going? Against Mortar I might not be able to go for anyway. Eepogi is Teamichi Castle. It just felt like, even though I have the war and the impact of strength, it didn't feel like the most balanced approach, and would just felt like it would be a huge investment, with maybe then only hitting 1 player who maybe at the end is also somewhat fine with defending, can somewhat in a fine way defend. And yeah, maybe it could still be the correct way, but I at the end thought rather to now just also, same as Grozz and Mortar, go for a lot of culture production, and I was really hoping that I might be the player who gets the Hollywood, and I might also have the best chances because the player in front of me is maybe the only one who doesn't really want to go for the Hollywood. I thought that Grozz at his next turn might go for the Red Cross, a card that I also could go for, but I would block myself from the Hollywood and it just costs lots of civil actions. I would only get 2 steps maybe, so I didn't like that too much. But Grozz might now go for the Red Cross, making it also a bit more tricky for him to go for the Hollywood. And so I was hoping that I just increasing my culture production and praying on a good Hollywood timing could give me the win in this game, getting a big Hollywood, even though I sadly won't get multimedias, but I still have a shot at getting a government form, so for movies, even without Bach, is still resulting in quite a big Hollywood. And now with committing into a non-military direction, I went with the civil service, just helpful for a lot of impacts. Being on 8 civil actions makes it a lot more easily possible for me to take the Hollywood for expensive, so I go for that. I use Bach again to upgrade its theology into movies. Of course, now I might need some more happy face at some point, but I ideally just want to build even more movies at the following turns. I will take the professional sports in hand at the end of my turn, and so I was fine with going for those movies. Who knows if Mandela is still there at the next turn with having upgraded the theology, it could even be an idea to go for him, even though I expected that he will be taken away. Maybe it's even guaranteed. Guess United Nations, Manhattan tanks, there is a chance that he might still be available if none of the cards in front of him are taken. And then I take the Engineering Genius, which would be a useless card if I don't get the Hollywood, but if I get it, it could really help me with 5 additional resources for only 1 civil action, so I was willing to take it at the end. Then I do get some cards. I actually discarded the Modern Army now because after those investments I can't really build it up quickly enough, but actually get a new copy, so if I should change my mind, I can now still go for it. Impact of Science might be difficult to pull off, maybe rather nice to have it in hand and know that it is not in the deck. The Impact of Progress could still get nice, but at the moment looks a bit tricky to pull off. Grozz opens the freedom of movement, another event that would have helped in case of a war. So we had arms industry, economic progress, freedom of movement. So a war could have gotten very heavily punished by those events. Grozz will use the event to put an alchemy into cannons, maybe wanting to be a bit more safe. He will indeed go for the red cross, builds 4 stages, so he gets most of the culture out of it, and then goes for another multimedia, develops the strategy, has some corruption, but is relatively well prepared to build some military and threaten some strength, while still having also now quite a bit of a culture lead actually, even before Eepogi now, because of the red cross. Mortar cedes and opens the historic territory. I was not happy to see it because I'm not in the greatest position to win it, and yeah, I was feeling, I think, bit too swordsman in my card, but at the end Mortar is able to win it for Rifleman, so not that big of a prize. He gets 11 additional culture. I was not too happy to see it, especially with the impact of colonies in there. It's even plus 14 culture basically. And now, finally, after that long, Mortar is not a despot any longer and will go for the democracy, using the 2 revolutionary ideas that he took early in Age 3, can develop the democracy, takes the patriotism and the tanks, wants to maybe be a bit more safe for the military, just in case maybe I get military theory or something, and then finishes the Red Cross. Also gets a lot of culture reduction going, also the culture from the historic, of course. So I was a bit worried because not that long ago, if you remember, I started to get a bit of a culture leap before Grozz and Mortar, but now all of a sudden I'm quite behind them again, and if the Hollywood is not revealed at the same right time, but as you can see, it is actually already revealed, and I was happy to see that Mortar didn't grab it. And with that, I at least will be the player who gets the last wonder, unless Eepogi goes for it, but it would be quite expensive for him. And he instead will go for another Nobel Prize, yeah, making too much use out of the Scientific Cooperation Pact, but I just think there was not the right time to cancel it for me. He will get another Nobel Prize, also again with Steve Jobs keeping his culture lead, goes for 1 multimedia. Now it is my turn. I seed the impact of agriculture just because it's the safest impact to seed. The event revealed I also knew about the international negotiations, and I am actually the strongest, and with that I can now decide what to take from Mortar. At the end I will take some resources, as I felt like I have enough resources to go for 4 movies in Hollywood anyway, but the more resources I have, the more strength I can maybe build up in addition to that, and make sure that I can go for the impact of strength. So I took resources at the end, but it also heavily depends, of course, on this turn and the upcoming turn, so I had to do some calculations. And yeah, I definitely have to go for the Hollywood this turn. Also, I used the freedom of movement to put a coal into movies, which of course will result in a bit of resource loss, but it will improve my culture production this turn. And the first idea that came into my mind was just to go for the most greedy line possible, as I might need to play it a bit greedy here, as I am a bit behind here, but I get the Hollywood, so I'm also not too much behind if we counted Wonder in. But I thought about taking democracy, developing it, and then using Bach to upgrade the lab into movies. In that case, I probably would have taken science instead of resource, because now I would have corruption if I go for that line. I would go for a lot of culture production then. I get another 5 from movies with Bach, another 3 from democracy, so 26 culture production this turn, and being prepared to go for big Hollywood. It would be the perfect move, if only there wouldn't be one of my opponents who, sadly, even if it's basically by accident or by chance, is prepared to potentially punish me with a war, because if I invest 15 science into democracy, I don't have enough science left to go for air forces. I can go for 1 more army, but not more, because I have not enough military actions, and I think also not enough resource, but I think especially the military actions are the problem here, and of course also then the population. So I can only go for 1 more defensive army, and Eepogi can't go for a big war, but there are both copies of military theory left, and if he has a war and one of those will be available for him, he can develop it and build another defensive army. It's not too much, but it will be enough to defeat me. And he can also sacrifice with the Imagery Castle. He has no wonder that he can work towards. It's not that he is doing a big sacrifice, especially because he also doesn't have to destroy anything. Unless the age ends before his turn, then he would need to destroy something, but it might be that the age doesn't end before his turn. And yeah, if he has a war, I do think it would be a good decision for him to go for that war. And even it didn't look like he prepared for any war build up, and still he could have just that one war in hand and could see the opportunity. But still, I had to think about it. Am I maybe in a position to take that risk? Maybe, but at the end, I also thought I still will get 4 movies with the Hollywood. I will have some big cultural production in my latest turns. And so I ended up taking the democracy, but playing it not greedy, keeping the democracy in hand, and as a replacement, at least taking the endowment here, which, with me being behind in culture, will give me 6 additional culture. So while I miss out on some big culture production this turn and also on the opportunity to use Bach one more time, at least I get 6 culture from there, and keeping the scientific method might also be nice for some impacts. I think for the impact of science I'm weakest anyway, but especially the impact of balance would get quite a hit. I would be quite worse when I go for that upgrade. Impact of variety, I know that it's not in the deck. So I felt like I miss out on some culture, but with that I can go for Air Forces, I'm safe from everyone. At the next turn I can go for the democracy, build another movie, and I will still have enough resource to finish the Hollywood at the next turn, while also going for a bit of other stuff, but maybe not that much, and not being able to upgrade the slab with Bach could be costly. I would have more resources to build up some more military, making it more likely that I can go for the impact of strength. But yeah, at the end, I just didn't want to risk that Eepogi has a war in hand. I think Grozz is not really in position because of lacking military actions to go for a big war, anything, especially also with not having enough science for air forces, but Eepogi could go for war, and at the end I was not willing to go for the greedy line here. And at least I'm also close to 100 culture now. I draw 2 defense cards and a raid. Sadly no more impacts. Also, sadly, there will be an international tourism between Grozz and Eepogi. Both have 3 wonders. It makes sense that Eepogi gets this pact offered. It's at least relatively late, but still 6 culture gained for both of them. Grozz will then build the multimedia. Another one is now 22 culture. He's not that much concerned about wars, but also rightly so. And I mean, he still takes some cards in hand and makes sure to be relatively safe. Can go for another rifleman, 2 air forces, so that should make him completely safe. Mortar seats. The first impact is revealed. Ironically, sadly, it is actually an impact that I would have improved if I would have gotten rid of my lab. The impact of happiness could have been a bit better, and it's really not the greatest impact for me to see. But of course that is one of my weaknesses, especially after having upgraded the theology to movies. Mortar takes some text, maybe plans on going for some Nobel Prizes on his last turn, builds another journalism. I have taken some resources away from him, which maybe limits him a little bit in how much he can build, because with 3 resources more he could have built 2 more operas at his next turn, which is now not possible for him. And now, then there's a peace treaty offered by Eepogi. I do not plan to go for any wars or aggressions against him. Of course, it could make it that he can play it very, very greedily, but I don't think it makes that big of a difference for him, and so I was willing to accept it for the additional culture production. Eepogi will go for computers. I was happy to see that the age ended just perfectly, and just with the exact amount of cards that needed to be taken, the age ended, and with that the pact got cancelled, so he can't develop the text for cheaper any longer. Maybe also a thing that Mortar took into account during his turn, so he can't go for Nobel Prize this turn, but at the next turn he then will be able to go for a Nobel Prize. Now it is my turn, and I had again 2 different lines that I needed to consider, and that also influenced on what I wanted to seed this turn, because the impact of strength I certainly was not willing to commit, because when taking a look at my opponents, all have enough resources to go for more strength if they want to, so I didn't want to commit to impact of strength. But if I want to see the impact of strength at the next turn, then of course I can't see any other impact, and the impact of progress is a solid impact if I go for the military theory. Then, seeding included, I get +1 against Mortar, +3 against Grozz, and I think +5 against Eepogi after he develops the military theory. But I would need to do this at a cost, and that cost is not electing Sid Meier, and I will also build an additional lab this turn to go for more culture reduction with him at the last turn, and I would miss out on 4 culture by not electing him, but I would gain the culture that I just mentioned by seeking the impact of progress. With having the military theory, I would be better prepared for some impacts like government as well. And I gain some additional strength, which maybe makes it more likely that I can actually play the impact of strength at the last turn. And with that, I decided to go for the impact of progress. However, there's one thing that I maybe didn't take into account that much, and that is that if I would go for the different line, I don't have anything better to do with my politics action than maybe just trying this armed intervention against Martin Pêcheur. And of course, at the first look, it looks like he only needs one defense card, and that is likely to fail, but I have 3 defense cards in hand. 2, I think, got sent away to colonies, one of them by Martin. There are not that many left in the game, and the chances for successful aggression are maybe actually higher than I would have, than it is looking like, and I think I didn't take that into account enough. And it was quite close, especially because there's the danger that the impact of progress is even revealed before my next turn, and I don't develop the military theory this turn, so I think maybe it could have been the better move to just exit Sigmire, go for the military theory, not go for the military theory, but try this armed intervention against Martin, as I don't get any draws this turn anyway. But at the end, I went for the line with the impact of progress. The impact of industry is revealed, which is a fine one for me. It's, I guess, quite slightly bad. I for a moment thought I had a railroad, but that was a different game that went somewhat similar to this one. And yeah, so it's just a relatively neutral impact. I will go for the democracy this turn. I think I have to do it. I thought about delaying it and getting Nobel Prize, but the thing is, not only do I get a culture production, I also get the going for the democracy gives me the option to go for a 4th movie. That's just too much value, so I built that movie. I take Sid Meier in hand. With going for Sid Meier, I felt like going for an additional lab could be nice here. I do think maybe I could have gone for a different line here, not building an additional lab and instead leaving myself with more resources for the military, but I think even then, I think I have now 18 at the next turn. I will take the reserves. I could potentially even take the military builder, but I could take the reserves. I will take the reserves. And then I would be at 18, 22, 27. So I actually would have 11 resources to go for another army. Maybe I shouldn't have gone for that line altogether. I shouldn't have gone for it and rather focused on being able to build an additional army. If I don't elect Sid Meier this turn, then I don't necessarily need a lab, unless of course I want to go for the military theory, which I do go for now with the impact of progress. I was hoping that maybe my opponents will just build a bit more culture production and not as much strength, but when you take a look at Grozz civilization, he can only build 1 more opera. After that he's reached his urban building limit, and then, I mean, why not build some more military? And Martin has some patriotisms in hand. Maybe even building another army would not be enough, so it's maybe fine to now commit to this lab, go for the military theory, try to get as much points for impacts as possible. But it will heavily depend on the impacts and heavily depend on how strong my opponents will be getting, because at that point I was somewhat skeptical that I will be able to see the impact of strength. I built this additional lab now in order to have enough science to go for the military theory. I need the reserves now in order to finish the Hollywood, and then, as said, I take the military theory, but I could have elected Sid Meier for 4 save points. If I would have done that, then I wouldn't have ceded the impact of progress, but at the end I went with the military theory, giving me a bit more strength, and also for impact of government, it could be nice to have. And also the additional lab, having that now, if an impact of balance is revealed before my next turn, that also would improve that impact. Potential impact of science I discarded. Then taking a look at the overview, I'm still a bit behind, but I am the only one who will get a very strong wonder now. So I was actually hoping that I'm completely in the race here, but I also don't have that many very strong impacts. So yeah, we will have to see how that will go. One of my impacts is revealed, the impact of colonies. Everyone has 6 apart from Grozz, so that is a fine one for me, but not a great one. Grozz will go for some more pop, goes for the modern infantry, the tanks, scores a Nobel Prize and gets 4 culture out of the Colosseum, so that's quite a nice amount of culture for him. He destroys a mine, builds an opera, builds an additional farm, which improves his harmony as well as his balance and agriculture, goes for some upgrades, is now at 40 strength even. And with 40 strength, he is at an amount that even if I would have gone for another defensive army, No, with another defensive army I would be at plus 13, so I could have overtaken him if I would have been willing to do that. The impact of Harmony is revealed, which I was not happy to see. Grozz gets another plus 24. Sadly, that was revealed after his turn. Now he just improved his Harmony. At least it's the equal for me against the other opponents. Mortar develops some techs, scores a nice Nobel Prize. Is prepared for impact of tech now a bit better. Plays those patriotisms, and with that goes for quite some military build-up. Has the shock troops, is now at 38 strength. And is even at 40 strength now, so with, yeah, I could have maybe tried to go for another army here. Eepogi goes for the military theory. The movie gets another Nobel Prize, increases population, builds a movie, increases culture production, and is now at 22. And now it's my last turn. I can't really see the impact of strength. I have to finish the Hollywood. It's too much value for me. And I will be stronger than Eepogi, but the situation is very close actually. And so I wouldn't want to see that only with a benefit against one player. And the aggressions I can't really play, so I will skip my politics phase. I will play the endowment for 6 culture that I've taken earlier on. I will elect Sid Meier, develop the military theory that I can do thanks to not having elected Sid Meier the turn before and having built that lab. Play the reserves. I finished the Hollywood for 32 points, so that's very fine. I will increase my population, and I build a religion. There's no harmony in there, but yeah, I don't think there's anything else that is worth building here. Especially with Harmony being out, that one could have been maybe worth to prepare for, but for anything else like building a swordsman for competition or farm for agriculture or something, it would also only give me 1 point, so I just went for the religion here, and that actually also lets me overtake Grozz for the impact of culture, so I think it's definitely the correct decision to go for that one. And yeah, with that, before the final impacts, it's quite close, and I'm actually the second position now with that big Hollywood and the endowment and my big culture production, so I'm certainly in the race. Sadly, I wasn't able to play the impact of strength, but I am at the second position and thought I was not that bad prepared for impacts, so let's see what those impacts will have to say. Grozz is in the lead, Mortar is a bit behind at the moment. The first impact is the impact of competition. I was not happy to see it. At least gives me +1 against Eepogi, but against Grozz and Mortar it's quite bad. And for Mortar, it allows him to catch up quite a bit. Then there's the impact of progress seeded by me. It's the same for me as for Grozz. It gives me +2 against Eepogi and -2 against Mortar, but I got a 3 culture for seeding it. Mortar catching up even more. We have the impact of technology. That gives me actually some points against Grozz, but it's really great for Eepogi, who is now the second position, only 2 culture behind Grozz, and also Mortar catches up to me, is now only 6 points behind me, so it's really close at the moment, only 15 points between the first and the last position. Then we have the impact of architecture, +18 for Grozz, +17 for Eepogi, +16 for me, and +15 for Mortar, so it gets 1 less for each position, so it doesn't change too much here. We have the impact of agriculture, which is actually the same for everyone, so sadly I'm still behind Eepogi and Grozz. I was not too happy about that outcome. Also Mortar could still overtake me. There's 1 impact left, and that impact is the impact of government. Eepogi is not that great in that one. He is only +18, I'm at +24, so I catch up to him. But sadly, it's not enough to overtake him, and at the end, I am 2 points behind Eepogi, 8 points behind Grozz, at least in front of Mortar, but yeah, at the end, not the ideal outcome. I was hoping for maybe a better finish, but it was an extremely close game and a very exciting finish, and at the end, Grozz is the winner, so congratulations to him. And yeah, a very interesting finish here. Interestingly, we now during the final impacts had this very strong impact of technology for Eepogi, and then as at this point we had this very strong impact of harmony for Grozz, who got +8 against everyone else. And funnily, Grozz revealed after the game that he wasn't the one who seeded the impact of harmony, so he and that one got seeded by Eepogi. However, Eepogi wasn't the one who seeded the impact of tech, so sadly some impacts were seeded who then benefited another player very much, which Maybe wasn't that great for me also at the end. The impact of tech probably then being seeded by Marta. Marta then mentioned that he kind of would have liked to see the impact of culture. He could have built another opera during his last turn, but with all those international tourisms and peace treaties going on, he just couldn't get the necessary culture reduction. I think also partly due to me taking the resources away from him with the international negotiations. He didn't have enough to go for another opera. And if he would have seen the impact of culture, that of course could have been very nice for me again. So I do think maybe just it needed to be a bit different for the impacts, and maybe I could also be on top potentially in this game. But I also maybe partly have to, or I also maybe went into the wrong direction. I didn't do any calculations, and would have required some sacrificing, but if I just wouldn't have gone for that second lab at all, wouldn't have gone for the military theory, wouldn't have gone for the impact of progress, maybe could have had a shot at getting the armed intervention and then leaving myself at a position where I can actually go for finishing the Hollywood, going for one more defensive army. Then I could have seeded the impact of strength, and I would have had one more big impact in there. I wouldn't have had a military theory that not only scored me some points with being able to seed impact of progress, but also for the impact of government. I would have gotten less culture with Sid Meier, but I also elected him one turn later. But if I elected him and didn't build an additional lab, I think it might have been that I even wouldn't have been able to develop any tech, if I'm not mistaken. So I might have missed out on some culture from that. I think the impact of architecture would have been worse, so I didn't calculate it through, but it's an option that I at least should have considered more, because I think after seeing Sid Meier, just very quickly thought I will build this additional lab, and I maybe underestimated how strong my opponents will get, and that the military theory alone is not even enough to be the second strongest, because it is, as the second strongest, I think I would have seeded the impact of strength. Yeah, so a very close finish. I built a very big Hollywood with Sid Meier, not something that you see a lot of times. Yeah, and with that we are at the end of the game, and maybe we can take a very quick look at the standings, as there at least has been one other game that has already finished. And in that other game, Marta was able to win in a 3-player game against Eepogi and Takusto. And with that, we have Grozz in the lead at the moment. Only one game finished. He was able to win it. A great start for him. Marta and Eepogi on position 2 and 3, but both of them having already 2 games finished. I'm quite behind. Not the ideal start for me, but at least I've only one game finished. And Allfather and Danny Boy both have no game finished so far, so not a lot to see in the standings so far, but maybe some small tendencies. Alright, I hope you're interested to see how that season continues. I can't promise at the moment that I will be able to cover every game. I might be able to do it, but we will have to see. Also, you can let me know in the comments if you would prefer it to see the whole season, maybe at the cost of not seeing that many World Championship coverage games or covered games from the World Championship, or if you would be fine with maybe only seeing some selected games from the International Championship and instead seeing more games from the World Championship. So yeah, let me know in the comments what your preference in that regard would be. And yeah, but I think I will cover at least some more games, maybe also all games of the season. I hope you are excited for them, some interesting opponents in that group. And with that, I say thank you for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.